The reason I wrote it was, I've been doing this for a long time in companies and businesses, and you don't get called into a situation, it doesn't matter what it is. It could be a performance issue, a culture issue, a morale, a leadership. You're not there very long before some issue of trust emerges. You can't scale anything without trust.
Well, hey, everybody, and welcome to the GrowLeader podcast, where we grow leaders that grow churches by helping them reach their full potential. My name's Matt. So glad you're here with us today. Hey, if you're new to us, don't forget, stop by GrowLeader.com for all things GrowLeader. There you'll find calendar, but upcoming events, and also ways that you can be a part. Sitting here beside my pastor, PC. How are we doing?
Fantastic.
It's a great day.
I'm really having a good week.
It's been an amazing week.
Yeah, and we have a dear friend in town who is an in-residence professor at Highlands College, where this podcast studio is. And if you've never been to Highlands College, you need to come check it out. In fact, just passing past the window here was 55 prospective students. Did I say it right?
You're the chancellor. You can say whatever you want to.
Potential new students, 55 potential new students that are here today for what we call Discovery Day. So that's always encouraging to see. And if you have any students that you think have a full-time call of God on their life, we want to be on your list of colleges and universities that you check out. And then if you need to hire any graduates, our students are ready for ministry when they graduate from Highlands College.
Yeah, and if you're interested in any of that, we'll put all of that information in the show notes. You can find everything in the episode today in the show notes. If you're on a treadmill in the car right now, don't try to take notes right now. Wait and go to growleader.com/podcast, and you can get the show notes and some discussion questions for your team, which I think is going to be amazing for today's episode because of our guest.
Yeah, we have an in-residence program, which means that we bring in experts, real practitioners, and I think the industry's best, from leaders like Louis Giglio, Chris Tomlin, C.C. Winans, Craig Rochelle, John Maxwell, that teach our students, because we want our students learning from the industry experts. And man, in the area of mental health and psychology, I mean, undeniably the best, especially in our world, the faith world, but he's even outside of that world, is Dr. Henry Cloud. And Henry's a dear friend of mine. Of course, most of you know him as the clinical psychologist and author that's written more than 45 books, sold 20 million copies, has a ministry called Churches That Heal. In fact, he was here teaching our students, but also capturing content that he puts on his array of online content and resources that churches can subscribe to, and I would be encouraging them to do that. But Henry, thanks for being here, man.
Oh, it's been a blast to be here. If y'all have never been here, you should come do it. I got to be with a lot of the students, and what was so great, I was telling my wife last night, you go visit colleges and you meet students that, oh yeah, they're in college, but what am I going to do? These students have, you could see the fire in their eyes, because all of them that are here know why they're here and know what they're going to do.
Yeah.
And they are alive.
Well, you taught them well. In fact, you did 4 one-hour sessions. You did a classroom Q&A session. We've had meals together. Of course, you and I slipped in a little golf as well. Well, had to do that.
How are you going to heal without golf?
And so, but thank you. You've left a great impression on our students. And of course, there's so much we could talk about at lunch before we came to record. You and I were thinking, what is going to be the content? And in minutes we came up with 2 or 3 hours worth of content we could put on the podcast. So, bottom line is, we got to figure out what direction we want to head in, because there is a mental health and emotional crisis. Just would you set the stage, and then I want to talk about your new book.
Yeah. One of the things that kind of brought this to a head, I've been in this space for a long time. When God called me into psychology, and my mission was to understand how does the faith and spiritual growth affect the issues that psychologists deal with, and that's what I've been doing for a long time. And what never made any sense to me was this division of there's psychology, and then so you got an emotional problem, you go see the Christian psychologist. You got a spiritual problem, see your pastor. That made no sense to me, because the gospel should address, and spiritual growth should affect all these areas that we suffer from. And so roll the clock forward, COVID hit, and now we've moved up from 15-17% of America being depressed or anxious or addicted all the way to 40%
Wow.
now. And I just started to get burdened by the church is poised to be, and the little tagline we use is, be a church that hurting people can run to instead of away from.
Wow.
And I just really believe that right now, if churches could just have a little bit of kind of nudge, don't be afraid to go into this area because you have the answers. Now, I don't mean by that people shouldn't see therapists and psychologists and psychiatrists and doctors. They need medicine or whatever. But so many of the issues that are behind the people in your neighborhoods and communities that are struggling, you can do so much to help them.
Right.
If the church just has a little kind of few paths to do this.
And you have resources, for those of you listening, we'll put them on the show notes too, Matt, that he has resources that you can download. There's curriculum, there's small group content, all kind of things that churches can be places that are delivering this content. I do believe with you. I think we should be churches that heal. We should be involved in this. But hasn't it hit the pastor world too? I mean, this podcast is mostly listened to by pastors and their teams that are in full-time vocational ministry. Of course, we have a lot of people that are in marketplace ministry, because I think every Christian's in ministry. But they're leaders in their own fields or in their homes. Man, make it personal. Like, bring it down to the person that's listening right now, that you know what they're facing and you know what they're dealing with.
Yeah.
Kind of speak to it for a second, and then we'll talk about your book.
Well, probably since the beginning, just because of where I started. My first job was in a leadership consulting firm, and I've been in that field since day one, and a lot with Christian leaders. And I mean, who are Christian leaders? They're humans that go into this vocation of shepherding. Well, shepherds are wounded too. They're also called into a war, and there's no army that doesn't take care of its wounded or equip their wounded. Really, but the church kind of expects the shepherds to do it all for everybody else. And a lot of times what happens is they go into the ministry sometimes out of a deep burden, a deep giftedness, sometimes out of kind of, that's like who they've been their whole life, is to help others. And then at some point they hit a wall. And the reality demands that come upon a pastor are contextualized different in some ways. First of all, who are they going to talk to?
Right.
So many pastors, their main community, they employ most of them, their closest friends, or the others are their
Which
donors.
creates a little bit more separation now that they become boss instead of friend or pastor.
That's right.
Yeah.
And they have a role that they're playing. And also, how many churches have, how many boards, for example? One big church I worked with, I could say the name, but it doesn't matter. It was Mariners in Orange County. They went from small to huge. And for 30 years or so, the elders had a subcommittee that reported to the board of elders, and that, it wasn't a subcommittee, it was a committee that reported to the board of elders. The mission statement of that committee was the health, care, development, and well-being of the senior pastor.
Wow.
And on that committee was a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a former CEO, a former pastor of a big church, the head of human resources for a big company. Their mission was to make sure that pastor was growing and healthy.
Wow.
And they had line item budget to it too. Wow. How many churches take care of their pastor like that?
Yeah.
So what happens is the pastor, where do they go? I mean, they're human. One pastor retreat I used to do a lot of, we would bring in pastors 4 or 6 times a year, and I'd give them a survey and a lot of questions. But listen to these 3. I would ask them, where do you go that's 100% confidential, that you don't have to worry, there's no stakeholder involved, that's just there to help you with where you're hurting, needing, wounded, or whatever. 80% of them said, I don't have anywhere like that.
Wow.
Second question, what relationship do you have in your life that's strictly one-sided, devoted to helping you in your leadership development? 80% of them, I don't have anywhere like that. Third question, how many of you would say in the last year you've experienced either a mood problem or energy level or stress or anxiety or an addiction, habit pattern that you would say has really gotten to be bad? 80%.
Wow.
Because many of them don't have anywhere to go.
Are those the cure? There's a phrase that I heard, I think, coming out of 2021, 2022, that I don't think, and I know it's not a new phrase, but I'd never heard it before, never caught my attention, but this whole idea of compassion fatigue.
Yeah.
And I think where people were taking care of people at such a rate that, I saw a lot of my friends who are pastors
Right.
kind of where everything got out of whack.
Yeah.
Is that the solution, those three things? Does that help kind of combat compassion fatigue and keep us healthy?
Well, if you think of those three areas, first of all, you got to have a safe place. Secondly, that pastors have got to have relationships that are one-sided for them. Now, we all need mutual relationships and our peers and all that, but they've got to, that's why they get coaches or they get, a mentor or whatever who are truly there to serve them. And then thirdly, you get to the clinical side, they need to be talking to somebody that kind of brings something to the party. They have some experience and know what they're doing. So, and there's a variety of ways to do that. But the other side of this about the compassion fatigue is, and Chris, this is where you come in big way and other leadership development programs. A lot of pastors I work with CEOs and executive teams on leadership. A lot of pastors, just like people in finance and marketing and sales, they went to school and got trained to do something, evangelism, preaching, children's ministry, whatever. Then they go do that, and they do it so well, now they're leading something, and they have two careers. One of them they were not trained to do, and that's be a leader. Leadership has a science to it.
Right.
And that's where, like what you do and what y'all do is not only teaching the skills of ministry, but ministers have to be leaders. So compassion fatigue, many of them don't understand how much compassion fatigue comes from you being Moses and no Jethro has ever come to you and said, Moses, what you're doing is not good. You're taking care of hearing all these cases and these people. And Jethro said, no, you got to learn leadership. You got to develop people underneath you and equip them to go do all this, and you reserve the hard things for you. So a lot of compassion fatigue is a leadership lack of training. And that's why I love when pastors get leadership development, because you got two careers.
That's amazing. Yeah. You just,
Chris, what you've done here at the church and at the college, okay, it's in the context of ministry, and certainly there's some specifics to this, but there would be many, 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 many boards that would love to steal you away to run a widget company.
Yeah.
Because the leadership
And there are days I
skills,
want to go do it.
I'm sure you do. It's a lot easier in a lot of ways. But there are skills involved in building things.
Right.
There's a gift, the Bible says.
Yeah. And that is what we want to do here at GrowLeader, and we are doing through our conferences, roundtables. In fact, you and I were dreaming about having roundtables next year together just on pastors' mental health and their well-being, and more to come. We are going to have a plan unveiled soon as Henry and I continue to talk. I wanted to talk about your new book because I'm so excited about the topic for a variety of reasons. The book is called Trust: Knowing When to Give It, When to Withhold It, How to Earn It, and How to Fix It When It Gets Broken.
Yeah.
My goodness, okay? But this is also a season where a lot of us in the church world are thinking about year-end giving. There's so many facets to ministry that require trust.
Yeah.
And certainly people earning the trust for people to invest in the vision of the house, but in a variety of areas as well. I mean, just to have the trust that's needed for them to even come and bring their families for us to minister to.
Right.
Talk to us why you wrote this book, and let's just unpack some of these phrases just in this byline.
Well, you're right about, if you take a pastor, for example, you have people in the community that have got to have a first kind of experience of trust to even come. Why are they going to come? And once they come, are they going to come back again? You've got stakeholders who are donors. You got volunteers that you want to give their lives. Trust fuels investment. And then certainly staff and all that. So this is central. The reason I wrote it was, I've been doing this for a long time in companies and businesses, and you don't get called into a situation. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be a performance issue, a culture issue, a morale, a leadership. You're not there very long before some issue of trust emerges. You can't scale anything without trust. When I was doing some research for the book, I was sitting on an airplane, and this guy sitting next to me, he goes, "So what are you doing?" I said, "I'm researching trust." He goes, "Well, I don't trust anybody." I said, "Really?" He said, "No, I learned a long time ago, you can't trust people. I only trust myself." And I'm like, "Well, I'm a psychologist, and you're crazy." He said, what are you talking about? I said, "Well, look out the window. You're at 40,000 feet. Did you get yourself up here? No, you trusted a couple people. You don't even know their names. And how do you know the guy didn't put chocolate milk in the gas tanks?"
Yeah, that's good.
You don't get anywhere without trust. And anybody ever scaled anything? How many campuses do y'all have?
Yeah, 26.
Yeah, well, what if you had to go touch every one of those every day?
Yeah. No.
You can't grow anything without trust. Right. But as a leader, trust fuels investment. And if you don't know the things, see, God has wired the system unconsciously, neurologically, psychologically, anatomically. We're always asking one question 24/7, am I safe? Can I invest here? Can I give? And there are factors that load on that algorithm to where your system says, I'm in, or it hits pause, or it runs away. So the reason I wrote the book was, go through all that research, you look at it all, it comes down to 5 big factors. And if pastors and churches could check the box every day, are we doing these 5 things for the community, for the staff, for the people in the pews, then we're going to do well.
Okay, give us those 5.
Okay, well, we got to do it fast.
Okay.
Number 1, we begin to trust somebody when we feel like they understand me. The Bible says, he who gives an answer before he understands is a fool, and it's a folly to them. Leaders try to persuade people into trusting them. Well, let me tell you what we got going. It's why you ought to join all this. Well, nobody's following until they feel like you know what they need. Now, then you're going to show them how what you've got is going to meet that need.
That's good.
When I had 2 knee replacements in the past couple of years, I went to the first surgeon. He walks in, looks at my x-ray, and says, "Oh, yeah, you need a total knee replacement." That's what I do. And he said, "Listen, I understand this. If anybody tells you anything differently, they're wrong. So tell me when you want to schedule it. We're going, hi, I'm Dr. So-and-so. It's been nice to meet you." And he starts to walk out the door. And I'm going, dude, wait a minute. You're going to amputate my leg? That's all. I said, you can diagnose this from, he says, yeah, this is what I do. This is what you need. He walked out. I said, well, that didn't quite do it for me. So I went to get a second opinion, and the doctor called me, and he said, I looked at your MRI. He said, how are you walking around? I said, well, I'm not. I've been in a wheelchair. He said, so tell me about the pain. When did this first start? And I said, well, he said, how did it develop? Did it go up? Did it go down? And all of a sudden I could feel myself like
gravitating
leaning,
to his leadership because he understood you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how many leaders dictate things, but they don't know what it's like for every chair around that table? What's it like for them to have to go execute that? And when somebody on your team feels like my leader gets me and what is hard for me, what makes it work better for me, and when a team starts to hear each other and what does your department need from my department to make you win, that's when it changes. So first we understand.
Okay.
So now my doctor understands me, right? Well, I went to get to third opinion because I wanted 3, and this guy comes in. He understands me. Then he looks at me for a minute, and he says, "Well, guys, come on in." And 3 residents come in. He holds up my legs, going, "Okay, see this joint right here, and this is what we're doing in our research project. And so we're going to take this guy and we're going to put him in. He's going to be one of the subjects because this is perfect, and we'll present it at the convention." All of a sudden, I'm realizing, number 2, after understanding, what's his motive? He was there for him, his research, his intent it wasn't about me. We don't follow somebody until we know that they've got my back. They care about how what we're doing affects me. They want me to win. Second surgeon calls me and said, "I've read about you, heard about you. You're a competitive golfer. Now you can't play. We got to get you back on the golf course, and you got 2 daughters." And he starts talking about my life. He said, "We got to get this thing working." I'm going, this guy wants things for me. I mean, certainly he's got to get paid. He has his own interests. But the Bible says, don't look out for merely your own interests, but also the other interests of others and holding those higher than yours. Right. And Gottman, the great marriage researcher, he calls a betrayal is anytime one person does anything in the relationship without considering how it's going to affect their spouse. That's what a great leader does.
Yeah.
It's what great companies do. They're wanting something good for somebody. So we feel that. So now we got great motives, and he loves me, and blah, blah, blah. So then I said, "Okay, Doc, I'm going with you." What if he said, "Well, I can't wait to do your knee because I'm an OB-GYN. I've never done this before, and I've been wanting to do one since medical school." I'm going, "No, I'm not."
Yeah, exactly.
The third one is competency. Trust is contextual. How many church, I know you've heard this story, or people they got a great friend, close friend, somebody loves them, and they why don't we start a business together? And they trust them implicitly, but they trust them because they understand them and they got good motives. But when it comes to competency, they don't know. That person knows nothing about ministry or nothing about running anything until they're in it for a year, and now they're in trouble. I don't know how many churches in nonprofits I've seen. Somebody's got a vision, and they put a board together.
Yeah.
Of people that love them and believe in their vision and support them. 3-5 years down the road, when that thing's at critical mass and you got a board sitting around you that doesn't know anything about being board members or how to go through a lawsuit or buy property or, competency matters.
It's one of the things I loved about one of your sessions you did with the students. Today you were talking about how developing expertise is a mental health builder, and it heals just by growing. Give them just a minute of that because I want to get to the rest of these 5. But I thought that was brilliant because, again, that's why people hopefully are listening to this podcast, why they subscribe to the things that we offer at Grow, is that they know that they're going to get better. And when you get better, your expertise grows. But when your expertise grows, you also gain the trust of people because now you have a competency.
That's right.
That they honestly is not found many times, especially in the ministry. I mean, they can preach, but that's where the list ends. But if we can develop our competencies in business, leadership, children, counseling, all these things, it definitely helps grow healthy churches.
It does, and people are, talking about the mental health part. We all have anxiety sometimes if we think we got to perform in a way that we're not really equipped to do. And people want to go through the mental trick of, how do I develop confidence? I need confidence. And I say, well, you don't get confident the same way a toddler does. Go learn to walk.
Exactly.
and then you'll be confident.
Fall down a lot. You have to fall down a lot.
We looked this up yesterday. It's 17 times per hour that a toddler falls down.
Yeah.
Okay, pastors, if you're afraid of failure or afraid of learning, you'll never feel confident. We got to get out there, and that's where call around your community, get business mentors, bring people to coach you. There's somebody that's knows a lot more about finance or human resources, and they're in your church. Ask them to come help you. That's what adults do. We look for other people's expertise.
And just grow. I mean, just grow. And you can grow. You don't have to. So many people talk themselves out of it, saying, well, I'm just not good at that, as if to say, and I'll never will be. No,
Right.
just go grow, go get better at something.
We were talking about this morning. Once you learn that you can learn, the sky's the limit.
There you go.
People say, well, I don't know that. Well, once you know that you can learn things you don't know, then the gates are open to anything, right? So now we got the competency thing. It's sort of like the, I always say, tell this story. A friend of mine said his daughter's boyfriend called him to take him to dinner. And he said, I know what this means. He's going to ask for her hand in marriage. And he said, what do you say at that dinner? And I said, well, I know what I'm going to say. I got 2 daughters. He said, what? And I said, I'm going to tell him to bring his last 2 years' tax returns. And he starts laughing like, yeah, right. I said, I'm dead serious. I am not kidding.
Wow.
He said, that's so intrusive and rude. I said, look, he can white out the numbers. I don't care how much money he makes. I just want to know if he can find them.
Yeah.
Because the job description of the competencies of a boyfriend are very different than the job description and competencies of a husband.
That's right.
And running a house and a family and being a partner to do that. We trust people for certain things, but we don't trust people for everything. There's giftedness and competencies. Okay, so now my doctor's a heralded knee surgeon. He's competent. Well, he says, well, this is a teaching hospital. You want to come watch me do one of these? I'm doing 1.5 hours. You can look through the window. And what if I go and I'm watching this and all of a sudden 5 minutes into it, he goes, oh my gosh, he's bleeding. The patient's bleeding. Somebody do something. He's losing his cool. The fourth one is character makeup. How are they glued together? I need somebody cool under pressure.
That's good.
They can have all these other things, but if they're going to freak out when something goes wrong, that's part of the makeup. And, Christians do a disservice to the scriptures and to themselves. We tend to define character in terms of moral character, like honesty, integrity, ethical behavior.
Right.
That's not how the Bible does it. The Bible defines it in a holistic way, of which moral, like if you go to 2 Peter 1, it says, if you're going to be fruitful, add to your faith moral excellence. So that's foundational. If somebody's lying, cheating, and stealing,
Right.
They don't belong at the table. But it says add to that knowledge. Are you a character that wants to learn and is curious and learns more and pursues more? Add to that self-control, perseverance, mutual affection. Does a team have mutual affection
Right.
for other departments and want to sacrifice to them? Brotherly kindness. It's talking about this. What if somebody doesn't have self-control or they got an anger problem? They'll wreck a team. They'll wreck a church. What if they're arrogant or narcissistic? So we got the character piece.
So recap them for us.
Well, we got one more.
Yeah, and give us the last one. Yeah.
The last one is what happened the last time, which is track record. The best predictor of the future is the past, always. Oh, are you saying if somebody screws up, they have no future? No, I'm not saying that. Somebody screws up and they come to a real ownership and repentance of that, and then back to gaining trust, they learn how to understand how they hurt people and why that hurts people and how people need them to be. They change their motives from narcissistic selfishness to being for others. They develop the competencies. Is it impulse control? Is it communication? Is it skills? Is it being better at their job? They develop those skills. They develop the character. And we watch that over a period of time and say, 2 years from now, can we trust them? And we say, yeah, I'm going to put him back in this position or whatever. And then people say, yeah, but, he really had a failure. What about his past? And I said, let me tell you about his past. He had a failure a couple of years ago, but in the past 2 years, here's what we've seen. And now we're going to start to trust him a little bit, and he's going to develop a new past.
That's good.
So we always have to look at, just because somebody says, I'm sorry, sorry takes care of forgiveness. Forgiveness is free. Forgiveness deals with the past. Forgiveness is absolutely free. Trust is earned. It's not free.
Right.
And it has to do with the future. And so they're very different constructs. One is, you got to have the forgiveness before you can do the trust, because you have the ownership and the brokenness and all that. But then we got to prove trustworthiness. How many in the Bible, he's been faithful in little, will give him more. Don't lay hands on any man too quickly. There's all of these incremental trust building processes that the Bible talks about.
But at the same time, we need to be more open, I think, in this society. Wouldn't you agree, to giving people that chance to regain that trust? We have a one and done kind of a mentality, this cancel culture. So we were a little over time, but you've got to talk about that for a second, please.
It's not at the same time I'm agreeing with. That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
People think one failure should be somebody's end.
Exactly.
It should not be somebody's end. And not only that, a lot of the failures people get canceled for are like hiccups.
Right.
It's just something that's offensive to somebody. And just because I didn't like something you said, I'll never listen to you again. This cancel thing is the most unbiblical. God would have canceled the whole program at Genesis 3.
Yeah.
He would have canceled Peter when he denied him. He goes on and on. Yes, thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah, good.
And I think a lot of times pastors that have had big screw-ups could be the greatest at some future point.
Amen.
Because that's the story of the gospel.
That's all of our story in some kind of a way. So The book is called Trust, Knowing When to Give It, Knowing when to Withhold It, How to Earn It, How to Fix It When it gets broken. Encourage you guys to check out the book.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cloud, for being with us today. And we'll make sure we link the book inside the notes.
And you guys have got to look up everything they're doing here at the college, because pastors have kids.
That's right.
And there's kids in their churches that should check out this place.
Yeah, definitely come see it. We'd love to have you here. If you have any questions about how you can visit the college, just email us, info@growleader.com. We'll connect you with the Highlands College team. Thanks so much for being with us today. We'll see you next time on the Grow Leader podcast. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. And we also want to say a big thank you to all of our partners that help make the Grow Leader podcast happen each and every month. The first is Compassion International. For over 70 years, they have served the most vulnerable children in the world in Jesus' name. Through the power of the local church, they've impacted over 2.3 million children, and they're not stopping anytime soon. Learn more about how you can be a part of what they're doing at compassion.com/growleader. The next is our newest partner, Studio C. Studio C can help you know your people and grow your church. They combine strategy, technology, and communications to maximize church member engagement. You can bridge the engagement gap and transform your church's impact with Studio C. Learn more about them at their website. It's thestudioc.org/growleader. And finally, a big thank you to the Wesleyan Investment Foundation. For over 80 years, the Wesleyan Investment Foundation has helped churches with their borrowing and their investing needs. Whether you're dreaming of a new opportunity or seeking wise counsel about resource management, WIF can assist you. You can learn more about them at wifonline.com/growleader.